Hey everyone, welcome to today's vlog. Someone asked me in the comments, is it cheaper operating a well than having city water? And I'm going to explain that question, and it does probably depend who you are, and the answer would usually be yes. So, I just planted my garden yesterday. If you have a large garden, an area where you're going to consume a lot of water, running sprinklers, whether it be just for your grass or whether it be just for gardening, or I have frog hatcheries, I'm constantly having to flush them out. So since I added the frog hatcheries, I've been probably using 1,000 gallons of water more than I typically would every week during the summer months. So over here, this is my drilled well. I have a propane cover on it just because I was worried about this. Caulked it a whole ton, but I didn't want to dig up the whole ground just to do this. But yeah, so to fix this, I'd have to remove the cap, I'd have to unsplit the wires. It's not that big of a challenge, but I just did the lazy option there. Anyways, this well right here is about 50 years old, and to my knowledge, it might still have the original pump down in the ground. I know my grandfather's house, he has a well, and that pump is original. It's 30 years old. But then the well company says sometimes they just randomly break down after a couple of years. So when that thing breaks down in the ground, that's a couple $1,000s, the pump down there. So that is a two-phase 240 watt well. That's what's running that down there. 240 volts. 240 volts is a lot cheaper for you to operate and run than 120 volts. It's just the way it is, the electricity. I'm not going to get into why that is, but that's a lot cheaper. I have another well over here, which uses no power at all. It's human powered. I have two of these on the property, these dug wells, left over from when this was a logging camp. I added the well on the top because they were capped off and just not being used anymore. So this one here, the well, the top of it, the pitcher, also the other well in the yard, it's a green one. Each of those cost me about $100. So the upkeep on that's very easy. Every now and then the diaphragm in there might go bad. I think it's made out of cork or some kind of leather. Very low maintenance. It's like a $20 diaphragm, and they last quite a few years. But we're talking about the electric one over here. Yes, they're usually cheaper to operate. You can use tons and tons of water. As long as you have a high water table, it's never going to run dry on my property. So I have a couple hoses outside. 1/2 inch, I can get 5 gallons of water out of it per minute. If I have a 3/4 inch faucet, which I recently installed on the house, I can get over 8 gallons a minute out of this well. The pressure is awesome. I have a pressure tank in the basement. A pressure tank is this usually blue big tank. The top half of it is full of air. On the top of it, there's a little valve. You can add pressure into it with an air compressor. The more pressure you add, the more water pressure you'll get in the house out of the well. If you put too much pressure in it, it can cause problems. I put too much pressure in my tank, and it started sucking air. The water couldn't get into the well as fast as it was taking it. So I had to let a little bit of pressure out of it. So a pressure tank adds the pressure to the house, but it also makes the well so it's not straining. What kills a well is it turning on, off, on, off, on, off all day. So you turn the sink on to wash your hands. Maybe you'll use, with these water efficient ones, maybe only 1/2 gallon of water, and you're not going to turn the well on just for that. So the pressure tank usually holds a good 10 gallons of water or so. It only turns the well on when that 10 gallons of water is used up. After 10 gallons of water, it'll fill it back up, shut off. That's why when the power goes out, we can still flush the toilet a couple of times before that tank runs out. So that just it takes strain off of it, having that feature there. So running nonstop all day with sprinklers and stuff, this thing here, won't have that much stress. With my older hose, like I mentioned, was smaller. The pressure tank would be on off every couple of minutes. Now it's running so fast that the well just keeps running nonstop, which is actually a good thing in that situation. I use so much water that if I lived in a city, I'd probably have water bills of over $1,000 a month. Here in the country, all I have to pay for is the electric bill. And this thing, if I'm away in the summer for a month, which I've done, the electric bill goes down so much. The biggest user of electricity on my property is the electric water heater, which may have been a mistake. I did that because electric water heaters are the cheapest to install, but they're the most costly to run. So yeah, it's much better than having a giant $1,000 electric bill every month with the amount of water I use. And this system here, the pressure tank, they're supposed to last anywhere between 5 to 8 years. But you never know, you might get 15 years out of one of those things. I've seen some pretty old ones, but they don't make them like they used to, like with a lot of things. So having to replace the pressure tank for $1,000 every 5 to 8 years, like I said, I would probably use that in a month in a city, that amount of water. And then the well itself, like I said, these things usually last decades. That other couple $1,000s to run that, very minimal for the amount of water I'm using. So keep that in mind. That's basically it. You just have to maintain the pressure tank in your basement and this, and you also have a sediment filter that I bypassed for all the outdoor water now because it would clog up so fast using that amount of water. And yep. So the upkeep on this thing over a course of 8 years, expect a few grand, not much money. On the other hand, if you're someone that doesn't have any outdoor stuff, you don't use water outside for any reason whatsoever, you maybe take a shower once every other day, stuff like that, you're using very minimal water, I think that's really the only case it would maybe be cheaper to have city water if you just barely ever use it. I can't see any other way where a well wouldn't be cheaper. Now we'll talk a little bit more about wells now that that question's answered. So this well here goes down probably about 60 feet or so, maybe more. I know someone in my area that has a 200-foot well, but that's only because they live at the top of a hill. My water table this time of year is probably 4 feet below me. In the summertime, it can drop as low as 10. During the spring thaw, it can come up to just barely below the surface. So I'm never going to run dry here with my system. Usually drilled wells go down into the bedrock. What that means is if you pour water or chemicals around it, they're not going to probably make it into the well. This right here is the watershed of somewhere else, and my stuff is probably coming from that hill somewhere. So that means with a drilled well, if it gets contaminated, it probably won't be your fault. It depends on the lay of your soil. At least here with our bedrock, if I had like a cow or something walking around here, it probably wouldn't pollute my well. It would probably be someone else's pesticides or oil spill, whatever there might be somewhere else. On the other hand, this is a dug well. That's getting surface water from just around it. That thing only goes down 12 feet. And in the summertime, the lowest I've ever seen that one is 3 feet on the inside of being filled. If I pumped there for hours and hours, maybe I could get that to run dry, but I just don't think so. The way my soil is, underneath here is very rocky. Water can come back over and replenish the wells very quickly in my area. Now, if you have an area with a lot of clay, which isn't very permeable, that might be a bigger problem. But around here, definitely not running these wells. They say it's been proven that having something like water sources or even just a little trickling fountain in your office, it can really relieve stress and it's relaxing. And I find it relaxing. In the summertime, I have a bunch of garden planters. I'll walk over to these wells just to get my water. There's no compression on this at all. But walking over here to fill up watering cans and stuff, it's very relaxing and therapeutic. This water's not the cleanest. There's some mosquitoes and stuff in it, but that's the water table in this part of the property. Even in the driest summer, there's always puddles here on this one. So you gotta pour some water in the back of the well. Doesn't matter that it's dirty, it'll flush it out. And we're not drinking the surface water wells. So you gotta pour some in there. The diaphragm in the back will swell up, creating the compression we need to start the well. I think I'm gonna probably start keeping something else here so we don't have to use this nasty water anymore. Yeah, we're gonna let that swell up a little bit. Usually only takes a minute or so. Now, all right, that's the nasty water coming out. All right, it only took a minute to swell up. Now the water comes out crystal clear. Not the cleanest bucket, but maybe you can tell that water is crystal clear, and I can fill a 5-gallon bucket in like less than 20 seconds if I'm pumping fast enough. And the water is really clear, and I just personally find it relaxing pumping water like that myself. Nice and relaxing, and this is so debris doesn't get in the back of it. Yeah, I think I'm going to start keeping a little dish there that'll just stay full of rainwater or something. All right, everyone. On my house, I just disconnected one of the sprinkler timers, and we're going to find out exactly how many gallons per minute come out of this. All right, turn the water on. Some people have garden hoses like those curly ones or those weird ones with a small inner diameter, but most inner diameters are going to be 3/4 inch. And look at that pressure. Look how far that goes. It goes over 8 feet. All right, on the minute mark, how fast can it fill these buckets? Go. The last reading I got was about 8 gallons a minute. We are only 10 seconds in. 15 seconds in. 20 seconds in. 25 seconds in. 30 seconds in. 35. 40. 45. 50. 55. Wow, this is better than I thought. Look at that. We are getting probably... So, these 5-gallon buckets... Let me shut that off. That'll dig holes, it's so powerful. So, these 5-gallon buckets, are they 5 gallons to the top or down a little bit? Because I think if it's the top, we're getting 9.5 gallons a minute out of this. That is awesome. I know people that have city water that don't even get that great amount of pressure. People, I've also in my comments complained about wasting water. Well, you know those ground wells? This literally goes right back to my water table, which is super high. Most of the water we use just gets recycled, filtered through the ground, and right back to the well. So, I doubt it says, but cool. Crystal clear water. This is non-filtered water. It means it just doesn't go through. There is small sediment in my water, but very, very little. Anything you might see floating definitely come out of the... It was just in the bucket, those little specks you saw. Wow, that was doing better than I thought. And I was only getting 5. I like doubled it by bypassing the filter and everything in the house. That works great. All right, now I'm curious. Does this thing slow down the water pressure at all? I've used this and it works way, way better than it used to. But that might be right there slowing it down. But it's definitely not slowing it down to a 1/2 inch. So we're going to override this thing. Get it to turn on now. We're just going to get it to turn on for 10 minutes now. I'll just shut it back off. All right, it just turned on. Let me hook it back up to the house. I'm very curious if this will fill the buckets in the same time. All right, water on. Ooh, going real, real fast. All right. Here we go. Yeah, noticeably going slower, but Still better than that 5 gallons a minute like we used to have in the garden, which made a big difference. The water pressure was so high that a little bit of water came out at first of the second zone on that thing. All right. All right, 5 gallons. We're already doing better than what the water pressure used to be. Ten more seconds. 5 more seconds. All right, still 8.5 gallons, maybe close to 9. Yeah, it didn't make much of a difference, so those sprinkler timers aren't slowing you down much. All right, here's the water pressure of my old faucet. Ooh. It came out yellow for a minute like pee, look at that. Sometimes that happens when it rains a little bit. We haven't had discolored water in the house for a little bit. So I don't use this hose much anymore, so the water, I'm assuming, was sitting in the hose from last time. We'll see if it's any cleaner in the other one. Oops, I can't give an accurate reading. I forgot when I started. All right, on my end, all right, let's go 1 minute, see. Now it's running clean. I was just in the hose. Halfway through, bucket's only halfway full, so yeah, just like I said, we're probably going to be around the 5 gallon mark per minute on the older hose faucet. Unfortunately, this is what most newer homes are built with, to try to get you to conserve. A couple more seconds. And time. Yep. Slightly below 5 gallons a minute with the other hose. So that dug well at the beginning of the video comes out of the ground right here. Goes into what we call the pressure tank right here. So let me get this bucket out of the way and I can show you a quick example of how this works. So you see the water comes in here. And see, it just goes right to the house, right? This tank's over here on the end. So how that works is, like I said, there's a gigantic balloon on the inside of here, basically, in the upper section of this. So you fill that up with pressure. Like if we look around here, this right here is the valve of how you put more pressure in your tank. So when you shut the water off and the well is still running, it will fill this up, creating that amount of pressure up here in the top of it. Then this thing will get the signal to shut off. And then when you go upstairs and you use a bunch of water, that big balloon pushing against the water will push the water back out and into your system. When the pressure in the tank gets too low, this thing will get a signal to go turn the well back on. So that's a rough answer of how exactly a pressure tank works. Then over here, that pipe continues. We got a battery backup for the sump pump. Comes up here to one faucet. It's a boiler valve, same kind I put outside. It has the bigger diameter to get that almost 10 gallons a minute out of it. This right here is the filter to go into the house. That's just iron bacteria, but it will be white when you change it out. Turns that color in just a couple days. I usually get away with a month or two before changing it. It would clog up a lot faster when I was running all the water for outdoors through it. Now I've bypassed that, and outside, that's how we get all that pressure Now, boiler valves are not freeze-proof, so I added this little thing where you can put an air line on there and blow it out, or you can put your mouth on it and blow it out. Works just as well. At least in my area. Anyways, this is what this means. If you find one of these on a property you're thinking about buying, this is an auction property, so I didn't even know this was in here, but this right here, there's a return line and a suction line right there. And it's for an abandoned underground oil tank, which I've already had removed. Thankfully, it didn't leak, but that can be an environmental disaster, sometimes being tens of thousands of dollars to clean up in your groundwater. So if you see one of these, it might be a magic ticket to getting a much lower price on the home you're planning on buying. Or maybe that person will remove it before you even close. And if there's any kind of gauge like this on the ground, especially this one, look at that. It says there's 1,000 gallons of something on the property. So this thing here, you'd pump it, and based on the pressure of the depth of the oil in the tank, it would come back and tell you this. Like if I plug this with my finger, it'll go all the way to the end when I pump it. Thought it was cool, so I kept it on my wall. Thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.